So one of the biggest complaints I get on this channel is that I never do army style painting videos. So stay tuned for this video as I'm going to show you how you can make yours look better than Games Workshop. Hey everyone and welcome to the video. When I started this channel, my main goal was to inspire you to step out of your comfort zone and explore techniques beyond the usual miniature painting methods. We often fall into routines that Games Workshop teaches: base coat, wash, layer, highlight. In this video, I'll show you how you can break free from that cycle and effectively paint Tyranids Hormagaunts using alternative techniques. By changing up these steps, we can easily transform our miniatures into Grimdark masterpieces that truly reflects the gritty, realistic artwork of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Follow along and you'll see how these simple techniques can help you achieve a fast and stunning Tyranid army. Also, stay tuned to the end of this video where I'll be demonstrating to you some additional steps that we can add to these miniatures to really bring them to life. So the first step I want to talk about is priming. Now this is probably the most crucial step in the whole army painting process, and what we're typically taught is to get wraithbone and just base coat them and prime them up in this colour. But what we're going to do is add an additional step which is really going to set your miniature apart from the rest and add some really nice shadows to the miniature. So first up, I'm going to prime the miniature with a rattle can using Colourforge's Trench Brown. Now this is a great basis for our skin, but then what we're going to do after that is get wraithbone, and from a zenithal top-down motion is spray that from above. And again, this is going to do two things. It's going to prime our miniature rather than doing it black and having to paint it in like wraithbone, or you could just do it in the wraithbone if you want to skip that step out. But if you really want to transform these miniatures and add some shadows and depth to them, then I'd highly recommend doing the Trench Brown first and then the wraithbone rattle can from above, and that's literally our skin complete. Next step, we're going to give the entire skin area a wash of Druchi Violet. Now I do recommend thinning this down with water, with 2 parts water to 1 part paint. Now if you're wanting something that's a little bit more in line with the artwork that comes on the box, then you could water down some contrast paint Voluptuous Pink, but really make sure that you are thinning this down if you're going to use a Voluptuous Pink, because it is quite a strong colour. But because we're going for more of a Grimdark and what the Tyranids are like in the artwork, for this we're going to use the Druchi Violet. Next step, going back to Voluptuous Pink straight out of the pot, no thinning. The Tyranids have all these like little parts on their arms which are exposing like muscle, and it's got like these little open pores, so all of those areas are going to be painted straight from the pot with the contrast paint Voluptuous Pink. And this means that because it's a contrast paint, we don't have to go back in and do any additional highlights. But make sure you're getting all those little crevices and little creaks, because you will find that when you go around the miniature you'll miss some. But yeah, just put it to one side, come back to it and have a look around the miniature and make sure that you fill in all these little gaps in. Finally, for the skin, which is the final stage of the skin, just to cover up any sections that we might have dulled down during our wash phase and just to fetch them back out and make them pop a little bit, we're going to give the entire skin section a dry brush going back to the wraithbone. So just get your dry brush, and I really highly recommend following the Artist Opus way dry brushing so you don't get any of this like dry chalkiness on your miniature, but just very lightly work your way around your miniature skin section with the wraithbone. And that is your skin complete. Next up is a bit of a boring step, and that's all the claws and little sections that you want to be black, is go in there and black them out with any black that you want. And for this I used AK black, but an alternative to this would be Abaddon black. Next up, we're going to use a 50-50 mix of purple naggaroth night, and we're going to mix that with Abaddon black. So we've got a 50-50 mix of the naggaroth night and Abaddon black, and just go over all the Carapace. Now an alternative way you could do this is just use Leviathan purple. However, it's a little bit too saturated and a little bit punchy for the look that we're trying to achieve. And then to finish it off, just get your naggaroth night straight from the pot and dry brush it onto the Carapace. And then if you want to add an additional final highlight, you could mix in a tiny little bit of Decala Lilac. I only add a tiny little bit of this in with the Naggaroth Knight just as one additional highlight if you want to do that. For all his claws, we want to give these a dry brush in Gal Vorbak Red, so making sure that you are still leaving some black, and this wants to be a really light dry brush all over the claws, and then we're going to get Khorne Red right on the tips and just again dry brush them onto the tips. And again, all the stages that we've done so far have not even taken that long, especially the stage that we're doing now with the claws. You could easily do these in, like, I think, well, you've seen them in real time, like they literally took seconds to get through them. And just adding these extra few little steps, which don't even take long, can really set your miniatures apart from the rest. All the teeth were just painted white, and you can sort of achieve and paint these really easily, because I know these are small details that not a lot of us might be like accomplished in painting, but all you have to do is you can almost use like a dry brushing motion on the teeth, just get a little bit of paint on your brush, and like you would if you were dry brushing, you can just paint those teeth in. And then all the eyes, you can do these whatever colour you want. If you want to do them red, you can do them red, but for me, I used orange. Now the final step that we're going to add to these miniatures to make them more grimdark is obviously using a unifying wash of Goons Grime. Now I know that some of you might not have the new Villainy inks range, which is the Goons Grime. If you've not, then I'd highly recommend going out and picking up these sets because they are absolutely unbelievable. But if you can't get hold of these Villainy inks, then Streak and Grime will be absolutely fine for this. And I've just thinned this with mineral spirits, so it's nice and runny. It's going to run into all those crevices, and then you can, once it's given it around 10 minutes to dry, then you can come in with a cotton swab and start to remove it and dab areas out. And I know this step might not seem like crucial, and a lot of people like armor painting, you can even leave it before you do this. You don't even have to do this step. You know, if you want to make them look really realistic, then I highly recommend adding some enamels. And I know a lot of people can be scared of enamels, and there's no reason to be scared of these. You know, I paint with these all the time. If not, I paint with these more than I do acrylics, and especially with the new Villainy inks range, they have the least toxicity available on the market at this moment. But again, if you're doing these in armor painting, you could apply these, move on to your next one, move on to your next one, move on to your next one, and by the time you've got to end your first one, it'll be nice and dry, ready for you to go into your removal process. And then at this point, the last thing to do to your Tyranids is base them, and again, you can use whatever basing scheme that you want to use. But if you're wanting some advice and some tips on some really good basing products at the moment, and if you want, I'll leave a link in the description to a video I did on the Kraut cover basing scenics. This is an all-in-one sort of cheap package, and it can be cheaper than going out and buying all your bits and bobs to create these amazing bases. It's just a one dip sort of done. For this one, I wanted it to be like a foresty style, as though these guys are running through forest. And for this, I've used Kraut Covers Cardama Woods. Again, they have a huge range of products that in my eyes are far superior and look 10 times better than any like texture paint or any like ones that you can get from Gamesworkshop, and just apply them to your base. Seriously guys, go and check out some Kraut cover basing scenics, but again, you can base these in whatever scheme that you like. Now, I did say at the beginning of this video that I would go over some additional techniques that you can utilize in this project if you're wanting to take your Tyranids to the next level. Again, this is just optional, and you don't have to use all the stages that I've used in this. Like, there is some airbrushing in this, so if you don't have an airbrush, you might want to take some of the other parts and apply it to your Tyranid painting. But again, these are some extra little steps that you can spend a little bit more time on, which are really going to elevate your Tyranids. But again, feel free to pick and choose which ones of these techniques that you want to apply to your army painting Tyranids. So the first technique that I'm going to go over obviously uses an airbrush, and you can, if you want, skip this stage, and I've applied this once we've completed our skin priming stage. And all I'm doing is using Citadel inks, and again, feel free to use your own colours, and I highly recommend colours like purples, reds, or you can even go crazy and use some greens. And all I'm doing is sections like around the joint areas, I'm just firing it into the joint areas and where those little openings on the skin skin are. Now this just adds a little bit more visual interest to your Tyranid, and then we're going to move on to some speckling and mottling. And for this, again, all I've done is dipped like a stiff brush into some of the inks, and with my finger I've just flicked this all around the skin, and this will just give you some nice little mottling and like skin pigments that naturally would occur on creatures like this. And again, this is a stage that I probably would highly recommend adding into the army painting phase if you don't have an airbrush, and just work your way around and just flick all these little areas in. And I do recommend adding a few different colours. Now again, using the washers again, and we're going to use a lot of washers because I love to use these for like filtering or adding things as though it's like underneath the skin. I'm just going to add and paint really thinly some veins. Now for this I've used a different mix of purples and blues, but this Tyranid was painted exactly as the one we did before, so everything that you're going to see in this are just additional steps following along what we did in our army painting video. This next step is a little bit more of an advanced stage that some of you might not like, but this is what's really going to set your Tyranids apart from the others and really make them look gnarly. And what I've done, I've given the entire miniature a couple of coats of gloss varnish, and I've let this dry for some time, and I've used a blow dryer to speed up that process. Then going back to our washers, I've used some like darker reds like Carapace Crimson, and also some like green and dark blues, and I've fired these into like shadow areas and sections that, you know, I really want to like to start to gnarly up. And then I've got some isopropyl alcohol, 99%, and you really need to be careful with this because you can burn through like the varnish stage and literally sometimes go through your primer as well. So just very lightly with some on a cotton swab, just dab, and this will give you a more mottled appearance. But this technique for me really sets everything apart and just looks absolutely amazing. But you know, if you want, like, say if you've got like some main Tyranid character, this is what like a technique that you might want to use on it. The final stage that I'm going to add to this is some Yoo-hoo glue. Now if you've never heard of this product, so I know where it is, it's a fantastic cheap little glue product that you can use on something like an airbrush needle or a cocktail stick, and it'll give the impression of like slime and grime. And I just attach this in and around the miniature. And another thing that you can beautifully do with this product is mix in some red or like some blood for the blood god, and this will give you the illusion that, you know, like it's chopped through something and blood's literally gone everywhere. But adding this in and around your miniature, it'll just make everything look a little bit more slimy, as though they're foaming at the mouth ready to kill and eat some space marines. So guys, that brings us to the end of this tutorial, and I really do hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've enjoyed these additional tips, and you know, you can pick and choose and feel free which ones that you want to add to your Tyranids. And if you do want to learn more about Tyranids and see some others that I've painted, I've got a vast variety of Tyranid videos here over on my channel, so make sure after this video that you are checking them out. There is a playlist and a link to that will be in the description below, so make sure you are checking them out as well. So again, I'd like to thank you for coming along and watching this video, and I hope it's inspired you to, if you're just one of these people that just likes to army paint and just paint things nice and easy, but just adding these extra little steps and doing things a little bit different can really make the difference. Again, if you're not already, please make sure you like, hit that subscribe button and all that sort of jazz that people do on YouTube these days. Obviously I do have a member section, and you can also help me out by buying me a coffee. So thanks again guys, and until next time, I will catch you in my next video.